Welcome to the Moonscape update. Andreas Jonsson was the very first individual, apart from myself, obviously, to be involved with Moonscape. He was the very first guy that I got in touch with when I had started looking for guest musicians for the Entity album, and he's one of the not too many people who have appeared on all three albums. I believe it was around 2015 or 16 that I made a post somewhere on Facebook saying that I was looking for a lead guitarist that might be interested in contributing some guitar solo work on a record I was making. And Andreas was the very first one that I seriously considered after hearing some of his earlier work. He is a former member of a Norwegian progressive metal band called Spiral Architect. I don't think they're active anymore, but they played music that I could only ever dream of being able to write, really technical stuff. And he was looking for a chance to do an online collaboration as well, so it seemed like a great opportunity for the both of us. He did several solos on Entity and the Chapter 2 one as well. And he did two solos on the Visionary's Fate song on the new album. And I've said this many times before. I have many favorite moments on the album, and one of them definitely is Andreas' solo during Jim Bruno's French spoken word part on that song. Cezar Popescu is, to put it short, a Romanian guitar wizard that I got in touch with after having discovered his YouTube channel around 2018 or thereabouts. I was writing the Entity Chapter 2 album at the time, and I saw a few of his videos, and I was damn impressed, to say the least. So I decided to take a chance, and I introduced myself and the project, and eventually asked if he would be interested in appearing on the record. He ended up doing 3 magnificent solos on that album, and he did both solos on Elegy of Lost Souls on the new album. He did 1 solo on the album version of A Rendezvous in Time, and he did 2 solos on the alternative version of the same song. That was on the B-side of the If Heaven Knows My Name single. So if you haven't heard it, check it out, because there's some really magnificent, I can't think of any other words. There's some really cool guitar playing on there. Cezar is in 3 bands. Vizza de Vie and Days of Confusion are both bands that do original material, and he's in a Pantera tribute band as well, which is called Domination. He released a solo single early last year entitled Giants, and on there as well there's some really cool guitar playing, so check out the track. There's a link below so you could easily access the song. And after not only hearing but also watching Cezar play the solos that he has contributed to Moonscape. I feel that he's a really intelligent guitar player, and no, he did not pay me to say that. Uh, just seeing his left hand fly across the fretboard is just incredible. It just looks and sounds really playful and sophisticated all at once. I think that's a good way to a good word to describe his playing, sophisticated. Uh, it's pretty obvious that he's really passionate about what he's doing, and I'm really proud, as I've said many times before. And I consider myself lucky to have Cesar playing on those songs. Another guy who has appeared on all three records is David Russell, who is an absolutely phenomenal piano player. I got in touch with David during the writing of the Entity record, and he did some stellar piano work on that one. I was looking for a piano player who could add a certain classical vibe to the material, and I eventually came across his YouTube channel sometime in 2015, I believe. And there's a link in the description so you can check it out yourself. Um, there was some absolutely brilliant piano work on his channel, so I had to try to get him on board. And as they say, the rest is history. The word virtuoso always comes to mind when I'm listening to David's playing, because I really don't think there's anything he can't do on the piano. I can send him a chord sequence, and not long after, he'll come up with something really beautiful that might just even end up on a record. And one example of that is the outro part on Illusion or Reality on the previous album, and the song Here With You as well. He did some lovely piano stuff on that one. The piano parts on the Continuum Synergy were all written out by myself this time, but I felt that they needed to be humanized in a way, so I really couldn't think of anyone better than David to make those parts sound just perfect. And I really wanted to include him on the record anyway, so he was an obvious choice. And I hope he'll want to reappear on possible future records as well. Leviathan is one more out of a grand total of five people, including myself, to have appeared on all three records. He did two solos on the first one, and one on the Ales to Withstand song on a previous album. He is a former member of a band called Unspoken, in which he played with another former guest singer that's been involved with the Moonscape project, Kent Are Somerset, who portrayed the demon on the Entity album. And Leviathan is in a band called Bull Seaman, and he has his own project as well called Abyss Below. He's been writing and recording his debut for some time, and I'm hoping it won't be too long before it's out. He's a buddy of mine from Oslo, and he has a more black metal oriented background. So when I had the idea of asking him to do the solo on If Heaven Knows My Name, I wasn't exactly sure what to expect. I did know that I wanted something a bit more emotional in there, something special, because there were already several layers of church organs, choirs, and strings to back it all up, and I felt the chord progression in itself gave off a nice vibe as well. Nothing complex, just a really nice, efficient sequence of chords. So when he sent me the first draft of ideas for that solo, there was something inside me that said, yeah, that's it. It just felt a lot like I had already heard the solo many times before. It just sounded right and it felt right. And I've come to realize that's an important feeling. Um, I'm guessing most musicians rely on the same feeling when they write music themselves, because it needs to feel right. You have to be able to stand for what you're making, you know. You need to feel that you've managed to express yourself the way you need to, both musically and lyrically. Um, you need to be sure that every idea in every song is the absolute best that you could come up with, and that you've managed to make them all work together. Uh, I guess that's the definition of what it means to be a perfectionist. It's a lot of work. It's not easy work, but it's very rewarding in the end. And I've learned to trust that feeling when it comes to including other musicians as well. When things feel and sound right, because you can't just say to hell with it and throw anything on there just to be done with it. If that was the case, I would probably settle with more of my own shitty solos, and I've never done that. I wanted everything to sound right. Um, I think I don't think there's been too many times that a guest performer's idea for a solo didn't work out, including Leviathan stuff. I don't think it's ever happened. And to me, that's a great indication of the performer's skill, talent, and musical understanding. Rafael Agostino is a guitar and keyboard player from Brazil, and I got in touch with him through a mutual contact of ours during the writing of the Entity Chapter 2 record. At the time, I was looking for one or two keyboard players who might be available to do a couple solos, because Diego Palma, whom I'll be talking about later on, was busy recording a new album with his own band. So I had to start looking for someone else to do the keyboard parts. And Raphael was actually one of two keyboard players who made their first appearance with Moonscape on that album. And the second one was Aaron Minich, whom I also will be talking about later on. And just like this networking thing tends to work out, one guy knows another guy and so on. I got in touch with Raphael, and he did two great solos for the album. One for the throes of desperation part, and the solo at the very end of the In the Morning Hours song at the very end of the album. And as I've said before, on the new album, I wanted to refrain from having the guest performers playing all over the place, at least when it comes to solos, because I felt doing so would help stabilize the songs in a way, make them each more consistent. So on the Continuum Synergy, Raphael appears on only one song. Um, he does two great solos on the A Visionary's Fate song, and that one might just be my favorite song on the whole record, simply because there are a lot of things going on in that one, both musically and story-wise. Um, Edward Nolan, the one of the two main protagonist, he eventually dies in that one. He's crossing over and he's finding the answer to at least one of his many questions during the course of that song. So there really is a lot of stuff happening in that song. But of course, I love all the songs on there. To me, they all have their own sort of character to them. Something that, at least in my opinion, makes them individually unique. So, if you ask me 1 week from now, what's your favorite song on the album? My answer is probably going to be quite different. Uh, but there's something about that song, A Visionary's Fate, that I feel makes it stand out a bit from the rest. Um, Raphael is in two bands. One of them is called Armored Dawn, and I guess it's safe to say that it's a Viking themed power metal band. Um, he's been in that one the longest, I believe. And the second one is Elevenber, which is a duo that consists of Rafael and his wife Anna. They describe their music as world music or new age, so it's quite different from Armored Dawn. Now, I may be wrong, but my impression, without sounding too cheesy, I have a feeling that Elevenber is a kind of musical celebration of the love between the two of them, if that makes sense. Uh, there's a video on their YouTube channel called Speranza, which I believe means hope. And when you watch that video, that's when I get the impression that Elevenber really is a celebration of the love between the two of them, set into music. Eirik Dischler is an old school and bandmate of mine. We went to school together from 1988 until 97, but we didn't actually start playing together until around 96. Um, when I joined the band that him and another mutual classmate of ours had together, a guy that later on would also become essential in a Moonscape setting. Simen Odne Ellingsen is his name. He played a couple guitar solos on Entity. So I've kind of gone full circle and had bandmates from my first proper band appearing on my records. And I'm really happy about that. It kind of ties my musical present with the past. It's given me a chance to at least just once more be able to play together with people that were important to me when I was growing up, people that were my friends, and I hope they still are. People that were part of my own musical development, and that has a certain special significance for myself personally, as you can probably tell. Um, we started out playing Judas Priest covers. We played some Running Wild songs, Manowar songs, but we did have original material as well, and eventually the trio became a quintet. We had a guy who played the flute, and he did some vocals, both harmony vocals and harsh vocals. And we had a piano and keyboard player, whom I think had very little band experience prior to us luring him into the fold. Um, I believe he had almost exclusively played classical music prior to joining us. So he was a great guy to have in an aspiring prog band, along with the flautist, of course. Um, we recorded a couple CDR demos around 99, 2000, before we had to disband due to military service, studies, and studies in other parts of the country and those things. And if I would have to choose one band that I've been in that I really wish had carried on, um, that would be it. Those were happy times, and in hindsight, for myself, they were important times. So I'm very happy to have had at least a couple of the guys included on my own records as well, to kind of reconnect. And it's a good feeling knowing that when the band ended, it still wasn't the last time that I would play with them, if that makes sense. At least that's my strange way of thinking. Um, Eirik he's mainly played the organ on the last two Moonscape albums. Uh, he did an organ solo on Illusion or Reality on the previous one. And he also did a number of organ parts throughout the Continuum Synergy. Diego Palma is an Argentinian musician. He is one of four guests who have appeared on all three Moonscape records. He's currently in his second tenure with his band Lord Divine. Um, I believe they've done four albums since 2004. Uh, I think the band was formed in 2003, so I'm guessing this might be an important year for the guys. Um, I got in touch with Diego the same way that I did with a few of the other guys. Uh, I think I made a post somewhere that he responded to, or maybe I reached out to him. I don't remember exactly. I do remember, however, that I was specifically looking for someone who had a kind of a Jordan Rudess type of lead sound, which Diego indeed did have. Um, and eventually he became part of the Moonscape equation. And he first appeared on the part called Abandonment on Entity. And on the Chapter 2 album, he played the solo a few minutes into the last song on the record, which is called In the Morning Hours. And on the new album, the Continuum Synergy, he did the keyboard solo on A Rendezvous in Time. And if you have a look at the lyric video to that song, when you see his fingers are flying across the keyboard, I was just waiting to see the tips fly off his fingers because he was playing so fast. And uh, I'm really happy and lucky, I have to say, to have him on board with the project because there's some real fine musicianship going on there. Um, in addition to being a keyboard player in Lord Divine, he's also a session musician. So if there's anyone out there who are looking for someone to do some keyboard wizardry on your songs, then his is a talent that I would gladly recommend. Aaron Minich, like several other guests on the Continuum Synergy, had his first appearance on Entity Chapter 2, where he did a solo at the end of part 3 of the almost 17-minute long track called Illusion or Reality, which was an instrumental piece called The Insidious Plague. Uh, he appears on 3 songs on the new album, but he's not doing any solos this time, believe it or not. Um, Aaron is working more in the background on this one, doing some keyboard leads during the second half of Rude Awakening. After the clean guitar spoken word middle section. He is the guy who's doing the keyboard melodies during the verses on If Heaven Knows My Name, and he does the pre-chorus leads on Beyond the Periphery, the last song on the album. So his appearances on the album this time were entirely based on melodies that I had already written out, that I felt just needed a human touch um, in order to sound better. And Aaron did a great job perfecting those. I believe it was around 2019 that I got in touch with Aaron through a mutual acquaintance. And I believe he was on tour at that point with his band Necrogoblicon. And in order to not take up too much of his time, I think I only sent him that one particular section to work with, the Insidious Plague one. So when he eventually got around to listen to the material, he seemed to like what he was hearing. I told him what type of keyboard sound I was looking for, and it didn't take too long until he had knocked out a really, really killer solo.